Greetings, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Dreamscapes. Today we have our friend Christian Watson, who is a YouTube creator. You can find him at YouTube/Christian Watson. Also on Twitter. I blocked out the word. Twitter at official C Watson. Links in the description below. He is the host of the Pensive Politics podcast. You can find or Pensive Politics with Mr. Watson on YouTube or on your favorite podcasting platforms. Back to him in 2 seconds, please. If you would stop what you're doing, would you kindly like, share, subscribe, tell your friends? Always need more volunteer dreamers. Need the channel to grow, etc. You can get a t-shirt, coffee mug, buy one of my currently available 14 books of historical dream literature as I train myself to become a real wizard by reading anything and everything that's ever been written and selling it to you, hopefully for a living. So that's enough about me. Back to our friend Chris. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me so much. I appreciate it.
Good deal. Right on. So usually I have a lot more like chit chat with people behind the scenes, but when we had kind of an aborted attempt to meet up the other day, we were already having a great conversation in like 5 or 10 minutes. I didn't want to lose any of it. So I figured we would just start the recording and just see what we talk about. Is there anything you want to say about your channel? What is the Pensive Politics podcast?
So the YouTube channel is my attempt to bring a more thoughtful and philosophical approach to the American political discourse. I studied philosophy in college. Even before college, I studied philosophy on my own because I was attracted to understanding how things work. What is the nature of things? What are the principles upon which our world operates? And this is all of those questions have a myriad of answers. And some of those answers are rooted in philosophy, very technical philosophy. Others of those answers are rooted in mysticism and spiritualism and subjective experience. Others are rooted in intuition. But regardless of where you get your answer from, the philosopher asks a few questions. Why? Oh, adorable dog. Why do we think this? Why do we believe this? Through what means can we know or understand and apprehend our beliefs? And so regardless if you're a theosophist, if you're a Bertrand Russell type philosopher who's very technical and analytical, if you're a Christian, a Buddhist, regardless of what tradition of thought you align yourself with, it's important to understand why you believe what you believe and to devise certain methods to test and challenge your beliefs in a manner that will reveal them to be true, untrue, in need of tinkering, or just right. So
absolutely,
what we do on the channel is an attempt to do that. Because right now, political discussion, if you narrow it down back to political discussion, does not include any of this hardly at all. It includes talking points. It includes tribalism. It includes fighting words. It includes presumptions about people that are unchallenged and that live by way of popularity. So, for example, I'll give you a few phrases that are often presumptuous that are used by people. People will say that liberalism is a mental disorder, which a lot of people will just retweet and like and put out there in the world without actually examining what liberalism is and whatever. And then other people will say that, like Biden said the other day, that MAGA is fascist. So without actually examining what fascism is, what the fundamental tenets of MAGA are, because to diagnose a condition, you must understand the condition. So to diagnose MAGA, you must therefore, as the premise would say, understand MAGA. Instead of doing any of this intellectual analysis and inquiry, political conversation is built upon weak and feeble representations of concepts. Imitation concepts, as I intend to say in a video I'll be putting out very soon on my channel about fascism. So I'm trying to beat back imitation concepts. And for those of the people who may not be familiar, imitation concepts is my own term for ideas that seem substantive, but in all reality, they fall short in some way. Either they're not entirely consistent, either they are representing a particular thought or concept in a incorrect fashion, right? What have you? The ethos of a imitation idea is that it appears one way, but it actually functions another way. And if you think of it that way, a lot of people in politics are the victims of false advertisement. Because that's exactly what false advertisement is.
For sure.
So
Well,
Anyway, that's a very...
you've said a tremendous amount of stuff that, I mean, the first thing I thought of when you were describing your journey is very similar to mine. Like going 20, 25 years ago now, I've always been a big fan of understanding things. And that led me to, well, what is understanding? What's the concept of wisdom and the philos Sophia, the love of wisdom? And that led me to, in school, I was going to do the philosophy thing. I was going to be get a philosophy degree. And what stopped me was looking at the economic potential. Basically, I could be a philosophy professor and never leave academia, which, God, I wanted to get out of school so bad. I just stopped showing up to classes and all the work and just let me out of here. And the alternative was I could stand on street corners and yell at people, which I do for free and for fun. So not the best. So I just said, well, what else is fascinating to me? And it was the why of, everything. But I said, the why of human behavior. That's got practical application, economic potential for a job. And it's the most fascinating, I think. Why do people do what they do? So that got me so my journey through in pursuit of philosophy kind of led me into psychology. And then I just kept following philosophy anyway, because I enjoy it. But that was number one. But number two, the idea of really getting a good critical analysis of what the subject is. Do you understand it well enough? And know thyself, as Socrates said, but probably my hero philosopher of all time. Just know yourself. Why do you do what you do? And believe what you believe. Were you raised, given that culturally, so to speak, passed down through parents and culture, or does this coming from some innate sense inside you, which and that's the grand old nature nurture dichotomy. So, I mean, it's good to have people recommitting themselves, I think, to genuine thought about the ideas that are being presented and at understanding them and refuting bad ideas. That's the best thing we've got. That's, like, in my opinion, the whole purpose of free speech is to get as much good ideas out there and to critique bad ideas to the point where people can see that they don't work, or they're structured as a manipulation or something like that. So those are my thoughts while you were telling me about your channel.
Yeah, those are good thoughts too. And those sort of Genesis type thoughts that get people into philosophy that you mentioned are also very important. And oftentimes they're thought of in a manner that is somewhat superficial, or they're thought of for a cursory moment and then forgotten as life continues to go on. Philosophy is oftentimes regarded as an ivory tower discipline, as a discipline with those who have too much time on their hands, who have luxury of having a first world Western type of arrangement. But the problem is this: philosophy has gotten that image by mass misrepresentation from a few of its institutional practitioners. Western philosophy particularly suffers from this problem. And there are a litany of critiques from many different philosophers throughout history about how philosophy is taught in the West. Some critique Western philosophy for not emphasizing Eastern philosophy very much. Some critique Western philosophy for being too narrow, or for having a certain methodological approach. There's a group of people that think that the analytic approach that was one of the more recent philosophical approaches, is the dominant approach of all proper philosophy. And you have people like Bertrand Russell who kind of represent that tradition, as far as I understand. But really, regardless, all of that stuff is secondary. All of that stuff is utterly secondary. Philosophy begins, as the old phrase says, in wonder. Philosophia. Philo being love, Sophia being wisdom, the Greek word for wisdom. If you have the ability to love, as all human beings do, it's a universal affection, and you have the ability to also apply your love to particular goals or desires, aspirations. Wisdom is an aspiration. So the philos of wisdom, philosophia, every human being has the ability to aspire for wisdom, and at the same time love the process of that aspiration. If you are a lover of aspiration, particularly aspiration to higher ideas, particularly wisdom, you're a philosopher. I don't care if you have a PhD and you've been teaching at Yale for 20 years and you have tenure, or you're a guy on the street corner thinking about the meaning of life. The only thing that separates those two is status. But this is not a society, or at least we shouldn't be a society of status. We should be a society that emphasizes spiritual values over material conditions. Status is a material condition. because status is assigned to a particular person and it reflects some sort of social classification about them. But what all of us have in common, remember, going back to the universal, philosophy is concerned about the universal. Going back to the universal, what everyone has is the ability to love and aspire. What everyone has is the will. And if you apply the will to loving wisdom, and you apply the will to wondering about different things about the universe, what you'll then find is that philosophy really respects the spiritual value of man. Spiritual being that man has certain processes that are a part of his existence that no one can see unless he reveals them. And when someone makes a conscious decision to pursue wisdom, they are exercising their spiritual faculty of the will. Because no one can really see our will, how strong it is, how dynamic it is, unless we apply it. It's like a hammer. Yeah. No one can really see the consequence of a hammer unless it's applied. So to me, the difference between the guy on the street doing philosophy and the guy in Yale doing philosophy is that one of them exercises, or at least has more potential, one of them is solely exercising their will of loving aspirational wisdom, whereas the other may be doing that, but he's doing that in the context of a political environment in which he's getting paid, in which he has to follow office politics, in which he has to appease a board of people, in which he has to follow university standards. In one sense, there's one guy with guardrails, and the other who doesn't have as many guardrails. He may have natural barriers in life, but the guardrails are not institutional as much as
complete freedom to kind of pursue whatever he actually thinks, say what he actually wants. Yeah, and
exactly.
There are people that kind of, well, what you were saying between those two polar opposites in a way, or the two extreme ends of it is all the rest of us in the middle. We all believe something about the world, about ourselves, about our relationship to it, our relationships in general, our families, our, what is it right to purchase or avoid behaviorally? This is all philosophy. This is all the ideas that we have about the world. In a way, the nature of being human, you can't help but be a philosopher, whether you realize it or not. And the more you consciously do it and choose to examine yourself, the better you get at it, the more pitfalls you can avoid, just in general.
Yeah. So, whenever someone says I'm having an existential crisis, they're being a philosopher. Even if they're not being a particularly thoughtful one, or they're just scared, and that's okay, because all of us, again,
that term,
Yeah, exactly. Because if you know how to use that term, or you have an idea of what that means, you know more about most people than about philosophy. But what it means to examine the meaning of your life in the big picture, right? Because this is the idea of the existentialist tackle, right? You got Sartre talking about being, and Camus talking about absurdism, and Kierkegaard talking about the absurd as well in his own way. All these people trying to concoct these different ideas. What is the meaning of life? What is absolute freedom in the case of Sartre? What does that mean? What does it mean to create your own meaning? What does it mean to understand the world? What is the world? What are we in the context of the world? And the existentialists tackle all of that. Now, you don't have to know all of that to know what it means to an existential crisis, but you're, in a sense, reflecting those longer conversations and dialogue when you say you're having an existential crisis.
Yeah, and that's a very common, say, crisis for people to have. They call it a midlife crisis very often because, why does that happen generally? Look up the definition and challenge me on this, or people out there in internet land. But the basic idea of it is that you go through life with a lot of programming, and you follow a certain path that you've been told or encouraged to follow. And maybe you followed your dreams somewhat, but you also tried to be practical. And you get to a point where you look back, and that's what happens generally, say, around people hit their 40s and they make changes. They look at where they've been and they realize, I've only got half of my life left, technically, on average. Do I want to keep doing what I was doing? Am I at a point right now where I like where I'm at and I want to keep doing that for the rest? So a lot of people make changes. They're like, nope, I did that for a while. I checked it out. I only have as much time left as I've already been here. I'm going to do something else, which is I'm 45 now. So, I kind of did that myself a little bit in the last couple of years. I'm like, I worked in inpatient psychiatry for 20 years, got a lot of great experience, really learned a lot, put my skills to the test, and came away with it, came away from it with things of tremendous value, I think. But this is kind of my passion. This idea. I've always been fascinated by dreams and doing this type of thing and just talking to people about these principles and theories and editing the books. And I'm like, I'm just going to try it, see what happens. Worst case, I got to get a day job again, but we'll see.
No, and I want to encourage you that what you do here is very special. Now, I'm not just saying that to say that, because there's a lot of content creators who aren't worth this, who don't have any salt to be worth in the first place. So I'm not going to say that. But what you do here is very special, and I really appreciate how you see the world. And so I want to encourage this ambition. I'll give you a little bit of an anecdote. When I decided that I wanted to be a public intellectual, that was my stated goal. It's not happened yet, but I'm still work in progress.
It's a process. Yep.
When I decided I wanted to be that a few years ago when I was in college, I had this Herculean task of deciding what way do I go with this. And a lot of people around me were telling me, well, Christian, you need to go and write more articles. I used to write a lot of articles. In a past life, years ago, I got published in places like USA Today, Washington Examiner, all these different places at 19 years old, which is really uncommon and atypical. And there were a lot of people who, for that reason alone, the fact that I got published in those places with no consideration for the content of what I actually said, but the fact that I got published, they were like, "Oh my gosh, Christian, this is amazing!" But I realized to myself, well, I'm being pulled in so many different directions. I was involved in a program. I won't say the name. People who Google me will find the program. It's very easy. It's out there. They know I was associated. I was a program for like a year. That was involved with pitching me for certain things and getting me in media. And their entire goal was to get young writers, young thinkers into media. And I tell you, I didn't have any autonomy. Everything that I wrote, everything came out of my mouth was filtered through the perceptions of two editors who had no knowledge of philosophy, and in my opinion, no appreciation of philosophy, or at least no appreciation of the kind of philosophy I did. And for a very long time, that process molded my voice. It made me more of a journalist as opposed to a philosopher, which is very odd to say, because journalists many years ago, like H.L. Mencken, were also a little bit of philosophers as well. So it's very weird to say. Standards were higher back then. But eventually, I decided, I was told by a lot of people, "Well, Christian, we want to see you on a podcast." And I didn't have any faith in myself. I'm like, why would I make a podcast? What's wrong with you people? Who would listen to this 20-year-old, 19-year-old at that time boy speak on anything? What's wrong with you guys? But eventually, I got over my self-doubt, and I made it. And the podcast did okay. First few months, I managed to get Joshua Wong, who's a Hong Kong dissident, got nominated for a Nobel Prize. He came on my show, which was just ridiculous to me. Unfortunately, he's locked up right now. He's in jail. The Chinese authorities took him away. Yeah. But he came on the show, and that was ridiculous to me. I'm like, I'm a guy who just started this enterprise, and I literally don't have any publicity or fame yet. And you're willing to come on the show. And things like this kept happening for me. I got Jo Jorgensen, the Libertarian presidential nominee. She came on. Nice. Running mate Spike Cohen came on, and Kane, the wrestler, Glenn Jacobs, he came on eventually. Wow. It was like a crescendo. And then I thought to myself, okay, hold on.
By the way, all of you people out there that have already interviewed with him, come on, tell me your dreams. I'll take all the free publicity I can get.
Yeah,
I'll ride anybody's coattails. I am not ashamed.
No, don't be ashamed. It's a good thing to do.
You gotta do it.
And I just asked myself, something like, what can I do to maximize what I already have going? Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, I'm already doing an audio podcast. Let me do a video podcast. Let me do a video channel. Actually, my podcast and my channel are separate, but people know me as the host of Pensive Politics, so I basically say, okay, they're the same thing. And as time goes on, I'll post more podcast episodes to my channel, more longer ones, but I just use it for now. And the moment I began doing the video, I began seeing more engagement, more success. I got monetized eventually, and that was a much better conduit for my ambitions. But at the same time, I still have people saying, Christian, you need to go ahead and write articles. Christian, you need to go ahead and go join academia. I had professors who actually were sympathetic with me ideologically, who knew about my video work, who said, you need to go to grad school. You need to do research. You need to go ahead and do research. And I told them, that's not what I want to do. And they were like, you need to do research, Christian. There's a lot of potential for you to go ahead and do research. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, and one guy even told me, I'm not sure if I can tell this story, but I'll say it anyway. A guy at the Heritage Foundation who saw some of my work, I won't say names, he got in contact with me. And we were on a phone call. And I talked to him. And he said, I expressed to him my interest in being a public intellectual, my admiration of William F. Buckley, people like that. And he said to me, well, Christian, if you want to be all those things, you got to go to grad school, man. You got no choice. You got to go to grad school. And I'm like, well, I'd rather just do it by myself, and I'd rather just get individual mentors along the way in a non-institutional context who will guide me and take my hand. And he said, that's a very unconservative thing for you to say. I'm like, wow. This is the mindset.
Is it though? I don't know. Entrepreneurial spirit.
No, not at all.
Not to stop you entirely, but to add my thoughts to that as well. Is like, so I did get my degree because it was necessary to go further in psychology. It's one of those things that's regulated, yada yada. I guess I could have always been a life coach. I mean, I'm a dream wizard now. There's no regulation for that, God forbid. But what I'm doing is giving myself like a self-taught masterclass in understanding the history of dream interpretation and what dreaming is and how our mind functions while we're asleep. I'm just doing the work. I'm reading the books, and the process of editing is reading them and doing the research, and I footnote them and explain a lot of concepts, and I'm basically teaching myself. I think that's something that's missing in this world in general, is a lot of the pursuit of self-knowledge for the sake of the passion of it, but something that yields tangible results that you don't need a degree for. And I think the whole student loan thing and funneling mass numbers of people into expensive education and debt, that shit's got to break. It's already broken, but we need to, I don't know what to do about it, but it ain't working. And I have a hard time telling, I got a niece who's maybe within the next 10 years, she'll be going to college. Maybe. Should I recommend against that? Should I tell her, I don't know if that's the best thing for you? I mean, if you can get it paid for, scholarships, family help, maybe. That's one thing. But if you're going to take on thousands of dollars in debt, maybe just don't do that. Maybe just get a small business loan and do your own thing. Start up your own business. Maybe I'll be in a position where I can help. But I have a hard time telling kids today, you should definitely go to school because it's worth it. I don't know.
I think that over the next decade or so, the importance of university, which is entirely an aesthetic and cultural importance, is going to decay. It already is decaying.
Yeah. Huge credibility loss for the restricted nature of what's allowed to be discussed. And right. I mean, typically on this channel, I get about as political as my guests do in terms of what they bring to the table. Because my job is not to tell them they're right or wrong, so to understand them in this discussion, to get a better answer for their dream eventually. But, I had a point that not political. Oh, but there's a problem when people are using violence to stop speech. I got a big problem with that. I'm much more political on Twitter than I am. I'm like, this is wrong. This must be stopped.
Right. Right. And so, there's a lot of things in that regard, but I'll get to that in a second. So back to what I was saying. So there were so many different pathways people were trying to push me down.
Yeah. People
who had a lot of importance and prestige and who were older than me and who would use that sometimes. And there was just a point where I said, you know what, I have to follow the beat of my own drummer. I don't want to do this grad school thing. There are people who do it, and God bless them. Nothing wrong with that. I wish them all the luck in the world, and there are people whose jobs require them to. Want to be a doctor or a lawyer, you got to go to college. And there's no way around that. You got no choice. Yeah. And so I would never discourage someone who generally wants to do that. But for me, it was necessary. But the institutional legitimacy, I even had people institutional legitimacy is great. I had people telling me, Christian, you need to go work for a think tank after college. Go work for Cato or Heritage. And be bound by their annual goals and be silenced about what I can speak about. I see people get fired from think tanks for deviating from the orthodoxy, even in a way that's respectful and humane. Why should I worry about getting dinged by my employer for being humane and simply reflecting my conscience. Die Gedanken sind frei. I think that principle is very important for me. Die Gedanken sind frei. My thoughts will burst free. Yeah, it's basically like my thoughts are free. No one can capture them. It's a folk song that was popularized by the sometimes great Pete Seeger,
the sometimes great.
Yeah, he was a communist. That's why but he was also a great singer.
Yeah.
No, he's not perfect, but he was also a great singer. And there were some of his songs that I agree with. A lot of his anti-war songs, I'm on board for it.
Yeah.
I mean, but
definitely
no,
hit or miss with a lot of people. I don't think there's anyone out there I agree with 100% on everything.
Yeah, Bob Dylan. Yeah. Bob Dylan's one of my favorites. He's one of my favorites, and even he's pretty. I think he's pretty left wing. You can probably gauge that, and that's okay. I mean, he's still a brilliant talent, and he deserved the prize, in my opinion, that he got. People were mad that he got the Farrell prize he got, but people were mad about it. And I've been appreciating Bob Dylan since I've been in high school. I think he's awesome. But yeah, so I was pushed so many different ways, but eventually I decided, you know what, I have to do what makes sense to me. And, that led me to creating a channel. At the posting of this video, probably will have around 5,000 to 6,000 subscribers, unless a miracle happens overnight. And I get a decent amount of views. And more important than anything like that, I have a community. But it took me about 2 years to build that out. 2 years of sweat, 2 years of doubt, 2 years of a lot of crying, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of theorizing, a lot of having different people advise me to see if they can be able to help me or not, and then ending up in the realization that those people were not actually the right people for me, and they were leading me down paths that I did not want to go, trying to change who I am, trying to change how I dress, trying to change. All of 2 years of that would break most people. Then you get what I got the other day, last week, with the posting of that student loan thread, getting over 1.7 million views, 2,000 plus comments. A lot of people in my own race, not that matters, but to them it does, completely and utterly destroying me, or trying to eviscerate me. No one can destroy your spirit. Yeah. Trying to eviscerate me for a belief that is based in reason. It may not be correct. You can have a syllogism that is completely valid, but is incorrect, right?
Yeah, false premises.
Yeah, exactly. So the laws of logic, I think we call an argument
garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, you're funny. We call an argument logically valid if it fits the form of the syllogism. Mm-hmm. So, like, for example, all dogs are animals. Jack is a dog, therefore Jack is an animal. Well, the syllogism is perfect, but the facts, right? The premises that you mentioned could be false. If Jack is actually a human being, then the entire syllogism is worthless. So this doesn't really tell us if those things are true. It just gives us a way to present them, and the form is correct. Mm-hmm. So I would have preferred people were like, okay, your premises may be good, as the premise could have been like this, all Americans all people are moral agents. Moral agents have a duty to do certain things, such as fulfill obligations. Everyone who holds student loan debt entered into an obligation. Therefore, as a moral agent, everyone being a moral agent, they have a obligation to fulfill those things that they took up. That is a syllogistically valid argument. Now, if the premises are faulty, tell me. If my conception of duty, this would be a smart way to challenge my argument. If my conceptions of duty were wrong, morally wrong, or just logically wrong, you could say, here's why they're wrong, X, Y, Z. And if your argument stands up, my entire argument's gone. Because my entire argument is based solely on duty, on a philosophical principle. If you can explain that principle is wrong, where's Christian Watson's argument? It's nowhere. It's gone. And I've been proved wrong. And I welcome that. That's not what this political environment encourages.
You get too many people just going on the attack for a variety of bad reasons, I think. I mean, what I like to do is look at, well, okay, maybe we all agree this is a bad situation. I think you and I just agreed earlier that this is not working. The institutions are losing credibility. It's predatory with the loan situation. There's a lot of legit problems there.
Sure.
What do we do about it? The specific solution, I get this a lot from people too. You get the argumentum ad governum. If you don't want the government to do it, you don't want it done at all. No,
Yep.
I want the government out of it to the maximum extent possible. I'm a minarchist libertarian is where I fall down on that. So what are the other options if we don't have print more money and give it away? Because that's a bad idea. I would like to see, the bankruptcy laws change. You can discharge that debt in bankruptcy. I'd like to see it where the institutions themselves become the bank. You want to loan this kid money to go to your own school and be on the hook for it. If they don't pay you back, God bless. They're getting third-party government guaranteed shit and they charge out the wazoo and they're sitting on billion-dollar endowments. This is all bad. So if we say nothing else, it's like, okay, cut out one tiny slice of the pie and say, we don't want to do it that way. That's bad for everybody. It's wrong on the moral side of it. And it's going to lead to practical negative consequences, inflation and other different stuff. We got a whole pie left for shooting solutions that I think most of us could probably agree on. And then you get the tribalism stuff. And it's like, no, if you don't want this one solution, you're an evil, whatever. And that's not getting us anywhere. That frustrates me a lot. Like,
I agree. And also, I'll add to your list of solutions. We can also get rid of the interest payments, which are particularly part of the predatory.
That's
you can get rid of them and just have us play on the principle. Really, the moment student loans incentivize the profit model of education. They incentivize that, and when you're on the profit model and you can feasibly raise costs without turning off your customer base, who are essentially guaranteed customers due to cultural expectations, then you will do it. And that's what universities have been doing for so many years by jacking up the price of tuition and fees, adding all these student centers to their place, which makes their education more expensive, and then selling them a bad bill of goods, having an oversaturated economy where a lot of these majors are useless. Even some of the ones, even my own major, I don't think it's useless in terms of life skills and understanding the world. But I do think that if you don't have a plan about what you're going to do with philosophy, you're in trouble. You need to have a plan.
I think you're in a unique spot today that maybe 20 years ago I wasn't in, because this really wasn't a thing. People talking to each other on the internet and millions of people watching. Now you can actually take a philosophy degree and say, I'm going to do something with it. And I can start a channel and I can write articles. I got a Substack and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
So it's a business model that wasn't viable a certain number of years ago that, it's still a competitive market. It's like, not every kid is going to be who loves baseball is going to grow up to be in the major leagues. It just doesn't happen.
Exactly.
You might get pretty close, or you might be somewhere on that path and say, I'm making a living as a kid's t-ball coach in my community. And I love it. I still get to play baseball for myself and I still get to be involved in the spirit of the game. You don't have to go all the way to the major leagues, because that's not a realistic goal for everybody to hit the top, but it's not enough room at the top for everybody.
Exactly. And
go ahead.
Which is why a lot of people avoid being a content creator because they will say, there's no guarantee I'll be successful like Destiny.
PewDiePie. Yeah. I will never be PewDiePie. I'm still doing it.
Or PewDiePie. No, I won't be PewDiePie. There's not a single political commentator in existence who is PewDiePie. Not even Hassan. Not even Sean Hannity, not even no one, not even Ben Shapiro, no one. It's true. No one. They don't have that reach. So why should I expect to be the one that breaks that mold? It just doesn't happen. However, having said that, I don't believe in defining your opportunities against what others have achieved, because everyone achieves their own success under a particular set of conditions. Candace Owens, she was a blogger and she went viral because she was prevalent during the Trump era. Ben Shapiro went to law school. Sean Hannity dropped out of only has a high school degree. Glenn Beck only has a high school degree. I mean, not everyone's going to reach the same place in the same way, which is why I think it's very important not to compare yourself. But I think it's also important to be realistic. I don't think I'm going to be Mr. Beast. And I don't want to, to be honest, I don't want to be Mr. Beast. I don't want to do that kind of content. It's not, I wouldn't be fulfilled doing that. He is, and he's doing a lot of good for the world. I mean, philanthropy, everything. Not me. But so I never set out to be the most popular or whatever. I had one person who's still in my life, who I love, but gets on my nerves sometimes, who told me,
As people we
Christian,
love often do. Yeah.
said Christian, your hand movements and gesticulations and the way you talk a little bit too fast, all of these things are going to stop you from being in the Olympics of your profession.
Mm.
And I asked him, I'm like, have you seen some of the more popular content creators with the kind of silly things they do with their hands and their voice? And he hadn't. He's like older gentleman. He doesn't really pay attention to the world. He's applying his broadcast news model, like what he understood in the 80s and 90s. Walter Cronkite, CBS News, ABC News, how they present their personalities. That's how he was trying to interpret me. But eventually he realized, Christian, I thought you were bad. I listened to some of these other people like that PewDiePie guy. Oh my gosh! I'm like, my point exactly. And PewDiePie is one of the richest.
One of my favorite gifs of him. He's got that towel on his head, and like, I'm a wizard.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I'm like, you know what? You really ought to just see. But yeah, so success for me doesn't look like being PewDiePie or someone like that. Success for me looks like reaching the largest amount of people that it's possible for me to reach with my kind of content in my lifetime. That's what it means. That's 1 million people.
Yeah. There's no keeping up with the Joneses on that one. My definition is, can I make enough of a living? I don't have to have a day job. That's it.
Yeah.
I want to pay the mortgage.
Me too, by the way.
I want to keep some whiskey for gaming, and I want to be able to just do this for a living. Whatever level that is, it doesn't have to be $1 million success. I live in a cave, and I never go anywhere. I don't travel. I don't like it. I don't go to social. I don't go out to movies or concerts. I don't do anything. I like sitting here making videos and reading books. If I could just do that, I win. I win life. Done. There's never going to be PewDiePie. Don't even want to be. That's number one. Too much stress for me. I don't need that many followers. Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah. No, me too. If I can make a decent living, I'm going to be happy. So whatever my content can feasibly reach, great. If that's 1 million people, great. That's 50,000 people, great. That's 300, 500,000 people, great. Whatever comes about through my work, wonderful. That's how I feel. And there are some people in life who are still going to compare me. I mean, the gentleman I just mentioned, he mentions Ben Shapiro a lot. He's like, well, Christian, you're not Ben Shapiro yet. And I'm like, what if I never am Ben Shapiro? Is that somehow a loss? I don't think so. I think that Ben Shapiro is who he is. I'm who I am. And I'm not trying to model myself. I don't even listen to him, in all honesty. No offense to Ben Shapiro. He was like a great man. I don't listen to many other political content creators. I will sometimes tune into Tim Pool, sometimes, but for like 10 minutes maybe, then I'll turn it off because
I'll be honest on that. That's my daily book editing time. I put on the Timcast Live News Hour, and I'm editing books and listening to it. It's kind of my daily routine. That is we canceled cable, so that's the only thing that's like appointment viewing for me. I'm there live for the show, and then I do other stuff. But anyway, it's a tangent, but.
Yeah. So Tim Pool, I'll listen to him sometimes, but if I'm listening to anything political, it's going to be a political philosopher audiobook. It's going to be William F. Buckley firing line from like 50 years ago. It's not going to be anything modern. Too much. I mean, sometimes I listen to Mark Levin. Sometimes there'll be sometimes, but again, few and far between. If I make this kind of content, I don't want to, by osmosis, absorb the style of someone else. Yeah, that's why I try to stay away from listening to too many people who do what I do.
I'd say that's the same for me. I don't consume a lot of dream related content of other creators on YouTube. I'd love to connect with them and share an audience in a way or whatnot, but I'm not really getting my ideas from them. Like, I've kind of got my own thing. Go to them and go to me. Don't let me ever tell you I'm the only guy. I'm the only one who knows what he's doing or my method's better. Whatever. You get a good answer, you get a good answer. But I definitely, as you said, I don't want to be influenced by other people's style. I don't want to steal anything on accident. I really need to, in a way, it's almost an intentional isolation, some barriers where I'm like, I got my own thing going on. I'm going to focus on making that as good as it can be without too much. Now then again, I'm reading all these old 100-year-old, 2,000-year-old books on dreams and dreaming, just to get the breadth of, so I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I can get the breadth of what's already been said, and I can build on it in my own way. So,
Yep, me too. I mean, you may have noticed I mentioned natural law a lot. If you've watched my videos,
oh yeah,
not sure if you
I'm
have.
big on that.
It would be, I've mentioned natural law a lot in a lot of my work.
I think natural law is the only law, honestly.
Yeah, I agree
in
with
my
you.
humble opinion.
I agree with you. As a matter of universals, and I agree with you. So that and so a lot of my work, I'm studying 17th century and a little even older than that theorists who have pondered these questions and who came up with a moral system that in many ways shaped and influenced the foundation of America. And so I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm not trying to invent a new idea. I do put my own spin on things. I like to reason by means of analogies. So, for example, right now I'm working on a river analogy because I believe that rivers and other natural landmarks can convey philosophical concepts.
I feel you. Yeah, big time.
The flow of a river can represent so many things in human life. It can represent creativity. It can represent the human spirit. And if you were to imagine a scenario where the river is no longer flowing naturally, where it is dammed up and it's controlled by mechanical processes, well, that's government attempting to control and suppress life. That's many other things that could be. There's so many different things you could say about that. So, and talk about oxbow lakes, which are, the part of the river that's cut off by the land eventually because it's like forming, it's like corroding a particular part of land.
We got here out in Portland, east of Troutdale is a place called Oxbow Park. Because it does this big swoop around a peninsula type of thing.
Precisely. And oxbow lakes eventually turn into bogs or swamps because there's no water coming in or out. They are static. They are places of no creativity. They are places of very limited life and resources. Whereas the main course of a river flows all the way down to the mouth into the ocean and has potentially infinite life and resources. And there are just so many examples where the oxbow lake put against the main flow of the river is analogous to things. So I just like to use analogies to understand the world and things of that sort.
One of the best ways that doesn't depend on just bare assertions. Well, because I said so, or another whatever said so. One of my speaking of that, I mean, it's like ancient wisdom. So speaking of matching, bringing in Eastern philosophical stuff. Bruce Lee, be like water, my friend. Flow, fill the cup. The analogies to wisdom. You can't fill a cup that's already full. The water just spills out. Nothing new comes in. The path of least resistance and carving its own path as it goes. And one of my favorites recently is the idea of rowing against the current in terms of trying to determine the best path in life, even on a moral level, I think. Is like sometimes you got to row against the current because maybe you missed the dock. It's important enough you got to go back and get yourself over there. But why row against the current without any good reason? Like if the current is flowing in one direction and you can participate in that, it will smooth the way for you. It will represent the best possible outcome. And sometimes you got to row against the current, but don't do it for the hell of it. Don't. So I think some of the arguments against the traditional or conservative side of things are arguments for rowing against the current on purpose without a good reason, simply to be contrary. Because where's my left-right dichotomy come down? Yin yang, exactly in the middle. I'm equal parts conservative and progressive in those broadly speaking terms, because you can't have pure rigidity. Nothing ever changes. It's bad design for anything. You can't have complete flexibility, formless, shapeless, no stability. That's utter chaos. You got to have that balance between chaos and order. Shout out to Jordan Peterson. I mean, he's bringing back that basic understanding of it's got to be the blend of these two, that we need them both. We can't have a functional society that's all left or all right. It's not going to work. It's going to fall apart either way. We need that functional balance, blending the two, in my opinion. So that's about as political as I get on a lot of things. But
I think there's wisdom to balance. There's a wisdom to the mean, so to speak. Aristotle talks about the golden mean a lot. There's wisdom to that.
Not the pure center necessarily, not in every case, but
not the pure center, exactly.
Balance.
Right. And that's why I don't. You're right. Not the pure center, because sometimes the center is a mix of two bad outcomes. That's why I don't necessarily endorse Aristotle.
Just a little bit of murder. It's meeting in the middle. No.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why I don't really
it's
endorse.
Not the right balance.
I don't care about the middle of the road. I care about where the road leads.
Yeah.
And if there are two perspectives that can lead me to the right destination on that road, very good. That's how I visualize what you just said. I don't visualize having balance for the sake of balance. No, because if there is one perspective that is clearly in the moral right, I'm going to follow that, and I'm not going to balance it with the bad perspective. I don't care about doing that. I don't care if we're doing that. That doesn't mean I won't consider the merits of the other perspective. We should all do that. Any person who's trying to understand reality should do that. But because reality is a dynamic force. But it does mean that I'm not going to, for the sake of trying to reach some grand idea of equilibrium, I'm not going to engineer a situation in which balance works out every time, because sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, that reminds me too. What was it? What George Lucas pulled on us in the prequels. You were supposed to restore balance to the Force. He did. He killed all the Jedi, and now there were an equal number of Jedi and Sith. He restored balance. He sure did. Be careful what you wish for.
He told, correct.
Yeah. And I look at the, another analogy comes to mind, something I posted on Twitter. I just post my random thoughts on Twitter about stuff, but the idea of the fire of progressive change and the stone of conservative order. And you've got to have the fire in the fireplace to be able to cook and heat the house in a way that doesn't burn the house down, and the stone doesn't smother the fire. It's like the utility of it has to incorporate both of these things. Neither one we can do without. So, there's the extremes, in my opinion, on the political spectrum. Like, it's good that they exist to define the boundaries, but they shouldn't be running the show, in my opinion. Way out there, too far, too much chaos, too much structure. We get into a big problem. So, anyway, that said, there's a lot of things that I would say even the left side of the spectrum are primarily, they are also more conservative than they realize, because there's a lot of things that they've got going that they don't want to stop. They want to preserve their traditions in a certain way. We're all conservative about the ability to breathe air and eat food and drink water. These are things about the human condition no one wants to change, because then you suffer and die. So there's actually, it's contained in those opposites, I think, is more than either side realizes sometimes. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent.
The baseline that everyone, by virtue of being human, has to abide by.
Yeah.
This baseline is a lot where natural law derived principles come from. Now, not everyone takes the baseline that far, which is a grave mistake, in my opinion, not to take the baseline that far. But there is a baseline. But that baseline is sometimes taken for granted and ignored in favor of other conditions, right? So you have someone, I'm sure as a psychologist you'll appreciate this, like Jacques Lacan, who believes that the baseline, the reality, it exists out there, but we're not subject to it as people who grow up in society. Lacan believes that institutions and social ideas, they structure our lives, they determine what is true and plausible, and the real, which is what is out there, is elusive. Then you get Butler, who comes in the 90s with gender troubles, and she takes this Lacanian psychoanalytic viewpoint and she translates it into a theory of gender, where she then goes ahead and says, okay, yes, so gender is constructed by these series of institutions and frameworks and beliefs, so much so that it becomes a script, because so many people tend to repeat this idea of gender throughout history. And so what happens is we all begin performing a script throughout our lives in reference to ideas of gender and sexuality. Ergo, gender is performative. We're performing a script. So the necessary conclusion here is that if you can change how institutions see a concept, you can therefore change how the script is written, and you can therefore redefine the concept. Ergo, you can change what it means to be a woman. What is a woman? It's a performance that can be tweaked at the leisure of whoever has the power at that point in time. This is a very concise explanation of how the ideas of subjectivism and not following the baseline of nature can get you into some very funky territory.
Yeah,
because
I get
look,
big problems with the social constructionist side of things. There's
right,
things that are and things that aren't in a
yeah,
way. And the thoughts I was having while you were saying that are the idea of a lot of people pretend or unknowingly advocate the idea of might makes right. Now they will, if you say that, they'll reject it. They'll say that's not what I'm saying at all, but it's kind of implicit in their arguments. And there's a way that's true and a way it's not. So being generous, I would rephrase it as force determines outcomes. That is a true statement in a way that might makes right is different from. Right and wrong, I don't think can be created by humans. I don't think the ultimate morality, whatever that is, can be invented by humans. We can only discover it in the natural world. That's where I go to the natural rights thing. It's like, is it violating these principles or not? But it's factually correct that if you can deploy force, you can make people do a lot of things. Force can determine outcomes. What's the nature of war? But there's in this what you were talking about the gender things, like if they could just take over the institutions and use the force of institutions to change how people behave, then yeah, they get a different world. It's factually correct. You can use force to control people. It's also wrong, you know, in insofar as it does not comport with natural law, as long as it is not truth based, in my opinion. So I don't know if any of that relates to what you were saying. These are the thoughts I was having while you were.
yeah. I think it's interesting. So, yeah, I wouldn't. I get what you're saying. I personally wouldn't use might makes right to describe that. I think might makes right is more of a moral, an assertion of moral principle than it is a recognition that force does indeed change things. Of course,
Yeah,
force
I
can
separate
create
them out.
outcomes. Having said that, I think force is largely a tool of negation. I think force negates creativity. Force negates certain kinds of behavior in favor of other kinds of behavior. So, for example, if I'm going to put a gun to your head and force you to give me money, well, I'm negating the effects of your creative labor. I'm trying to negate your liberty. I'm trying to negate many things, and ultimately, you have a massive loss of energy and possibility that just went into my hands because I just took something from you. So
Yeah.
and war is this on a larger scale. Maybe not theft, but it's a mass negation of human energy, creativity, and potential. It took Europe years to repair from World War II, and there are still countries in the world like Japan who still are bound to America and the West due to what happened decades ago. It was a massive loss of energy and potential that could have been, if you would have taken it, put it in the other direction, if it would have flowed down the river as opposed to going into an oxbow lake of destruction and war, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
you would have had a more possibility in the ocean. But now the ocean is deprived of a little
Yeah.
bit less water, and therefore it's not as it could be. That's how I see force. If I see force as a tool of negation, it doesn't create per
Yeah.
se. It takes away. And that understanding of force is necessary to erect moral guardrails around its use and to assign its proper use to proper authorities and to set limits for use by those authorities. And this is why I agree with the American political project. I think that the founder understood that force was largely a matter of negation, and therefore we had to control negation before it literally was able to destroy the context in which it was in. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's my perspective.
Well, yeah, and that's the libertarian, so the non-aggression principle. It is wrong to initiate force, fraud, or coercion, which is basically the using the threat of force to control someone's behavior. It doesn't mean force is neutral technically. I think the idea of you can use a lever, the force of a lever to lift a rock because you're going to get it out of the way to build a house. Fair enough. Or you can use the force of a gun to take someone's money. It's force.
Sure,
But
sure.
initiating force against people, that's why they say that's wrong. And then they call it aggression, basically, to aggress against someone. So that's, as far as I found, I have not found a better expression of what the right limits on force are than the NAP. That's at the bottom line of everything for it, which is why I'm a libertarian. And then I don't know, my minarchist side is we may or may not be able to, and may not want to get rid of the U.S. government per se, as far as the Constitution enumerates, I think, very good structure of how to protect natural rights. I think that's what it was designed to do. We got far away from it, So what I want to do, my ideal situation in being a minarchist, is to say, let's see, let's not go anarchy. That may be too far. Maybe we'll get there. Maybe that's the goal someday. Maybe not. No more governments might be possible, might be a beautiful thing. But I say, let's make it as small as we can right before it all falls apart and hold it there. Let's not collapse into something that's not maintainable, but and maybe that number is 80% less government. And maybe it's 90, maybe it's 99.2% less government. And we could hold it there and say, that's enough. That's all government needs to do. And I think a government like that could be run voluntarily, fee for service type of thing, low cost. And we don't need these massive taxes, taxation being theft, of course. We don't need, so many problems because it's gotten so big, in my opinion. So, that's what I'm aiming for. Let's see how small we can make it right before the point where it collapses and hold it there.
This is the goal of this is you're describing the night watchman state, essentially.
Basically, the minarchist perspective of the libertarianism, which includes borders. I have no problem with borders. This is our house. We live here. We are Americans.
And particularly the voluntary taxation you mentioned. That was a theory behind that was also developed a lot by a guy called Algren Sidney, who was an acolyte of the great Herbert Spencer, one of the greatest philosophers of his era. And I generally mean that. Was an absolute polymath, brilliant in almost every way. Didn't agree with everything he had to say. And he's unfortunately slurred as a Darwinist. He was not a Darwinist whatsoever. His ethics and his morals were not based on strength. They were based on first principles. In fact, he wrote a book called First Principles that I encourage everyone to go ahead and read. But it's dense, but it's worth it. So Sidney had this idea of a government constituted with voluntary taxes. It's basically, he is originator of the idea of voluntarism, which is sometimes mistaken with a form of anarchy. It's not. In fact, he rejected that label immensely. But no, I agree with what you're saying. I've been a minarchist for a while. I've explored the intellectual foundations of minarchism, Robert Nozick and Sidney and people like that, and I agree with their prescriptions. And I think that from a moral standpoint, especially as the Constitution was meant to be taken, that is the only way government can exist and not violate rights.
And not become it's like fire, a dangerous servant and a fearful master. That's one of the most important things people have forgotten is fire gets out of control, like our government gets out of control. It's so big, it just burns everything in its path.
Fearful master. Yeah. I think ultimately, and it's fascinating, man has brought himself in dominion over a lot of the elements, to a certain extent. Obviously, we can't control hurricanes or whatever. But, whereas if you were in the 1700s, a bushfire could burn down an entire village and there's really nothing you could do about it except maybe try to throw buckets of water. Yeah, you would just be... Now, man, we can just spray from the sky and put out fires. It might be a little bit difficult, but we can do it depending on how big the fires are. Mm-hmm. So, man has recognized his role as a creative spirit and has used that to devise means to master the elements, to bring the earth under his submission. Yeah. And in many ways, we've succeeded. This is an example. We challenged the space-time problem with this, with the computers, with webcams, with microphones. Space and time used to bind man. Now man basically doesn't dictate, but he has a lot of influence over how space and time are perceived and how he interacts with it. Oh, I mean, there are just so many different. There are so many different ways in which we've not warped, but we've used the tools of reality to make reality more amendable to us. We're not changing reality. We're simply expanding the possibilities within our mind and then using those possibilities for different forms of organization and invention. And this is the creative spirit of man that the philosopher Isabel Patrick talks about in her book, The God of the Machine, which really is a foundational text for many American libertarians. And this is a spirit that is quashed and strangled by coercion, by force, by tyranny, by despotism, by ignorance, because there can be a tyranny of politics, there can also be a tyranny of the mind. And the Hiero, Xenophon, the Greek philosopher, he wrote a dialogue called the Hiero, where Simonides, a poet, comes upon this man called Hiero, who's a tyrant. He's a ruler. And Simonides asked him, well, isn't your life so much better? You have all these riches, you got all this myrrh, you got all these people admiring you. And Hiero says, oh no, my life is horrible because with all of these added things, I have more worries, and the word is more pains than the average person. What comes about is that we realize that Hiero is actually tyrannized also by the passions. He suffers from the tyranny of the mind as well, yeah. which really goes hand in hand with the natural law principle of of cultivating a sound mind to understand reality, because the mind is the location of reason. And if you're going to have rationality as a value, I was talking about this in a video the other day, if you're going to have rationality as a value, you have to recognize that you have reason. You have to exercise your reason in a positive way. And you have to understand the context in which your reason exists. It's like having a hammer. If you don't understand how to build a building, the hammer will not help you, even though you have the hammer in your hand. You have to understand what it means to be a human being, what it means to possess reason, what it means to have a creative spirit, what it means to be distinct from every other animal on this planet, bar none. That's what it means to be a human being. I'm not trying to preach or anything, but just these are the fundamental ideas that are so important. And I think, going on the topic of dreams are sometimes a reflection of all or none of these things.
They very well can be. And that's a great, maybe a transition, because we were talking a little bit back and forth in the private messages about the idea of mysticism, occultism, and some of those broader topics. And so maybe to kick it off, I'll say my generic approach to dreams is almost entirely psychological. I feel like, because of my training, my life experience, the physical or material side of things, the reported experience of people and the understanding of human behavior and how the brain works as like a physical organ. This is my specialty area. Now, what I tell folks over and over again is I don't discount any of the other stuff. There's all kinds of shit that blows my mind, like prophetic dreams. People say they have them. If I believe they're not lying to me, then that's a real phenomenon. I don't know what to do with it. The idea of psychic communication between people in dreams, it's been reported. If I assume they are not lying, what the hell is that? So all I can say is, I don't know. I don't know what that is, but I seem to have found something on one side that I can explain and attest to. Say, I think I understand this. I think I can tell you how it works. What I'm going to do is draw a line for myself and say, beyond here, there be dragons. I don't know. I don't know what that is, but maybe. So I'm open to all kinds of stuff. I don't know what your perspective is on it, or how you came to a fascination with that subject on your own.
I'm going to butcher this word, but oneiromancy, Oneiromancy.
I have 3 books, an anthology called Oneirochronologia, the history of the evolution of dream interpretation. Those are books 3, 4, and 5. Some people say Oneiro or Oneiro. Either way, I think is fine.
Oneiromancy. Okay. Yeah. So Oneiromancy. I think I was playing a game one time. I feel like RuneScape. Mm-hmm. You remember RuneScape?
Never played it myself, but familiar with it. Yeah.
When I was a teenager, I loved medieval fantasy. I still love medieval fantasy, by the way. That genre was very fascinating to me. I like all kind of fantasy movies, whether it's like in the 80s. There's a movie called Kroll that no one ever talks about.
One of my all-time favorites. I know that. The five spinning.
Yes.
Baby.
Oh yes, I love Kroll.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Kroll.
That was a great movie.
Love the shapeshifter guy, the crystal seer, the widow. All of it is just beautiful, and it's unfortunate that amongst space operas, it's not really considered to be anything exceptional. I think that it's beautiful. It's a beautiful movie. With I wish there was more of an expanded universe. Wish there were more comics, more novels. Like if I wasn't doing this commentary thing, in fact, I still might do this. I would volunteer to continue the Kroll franchise. I would volunteer to write about it. I would volunteer to do that.
You might be able to buy the rights and do what you want with it. We'll see.
Yeah. Maybe one day, if I could do that, I might innovate into Watson Media, because I absolutely love that. My non-existent media company. I absolutely love that movie and everything that it stands for, all the virtues that it espouses. In fact, I think that using movies to convey philosophy is a good thing. You can do that with Star Wars, especially. You can get Lord of the Rings, but you can do it with Crawl 100%. I mean, they were up against insurmountable odds. This race from outer space invading them, taking the princess. They had to go through so many different facets and people to get to her eventually. But eventually she was rescued, and the insurmountable odds were defeated, regardless of all of the various different challenges they face, whether it be the crystal seer being killed, whether it be the widow swallowing up their main guide, the man. Regardless of what it was, they got her back. They infiltrated the castle and they got her back. And that's just a testament to how powerful the human spirit can be in the face of desperation. But that's a different story. But
I think that's in a way that was the original purpose for storytelling, was to communicate something about the human condition and the world we live in. Otherwise, why are we talking to other people about these ideas? Entertainment has its own value, but I think it all started. What was it? I posted a meme the other day. Someone was saying the original social media, and it was a kid and his grandpa sitting around a campfire looking up at the stars. Way back when, it was just humans telling other human stories about, here's what I did, here's how this works, here's my theories about the world, and we would tell them to each other. And then eventually we got into the idea of stories that are not just, this is what happened to me, this is the kind of things that happens to people like me, this is the kind of things that happen to civilizations in general. And that's kind of how I conceive. I'm a deist more than a Christian. But I appreciate that's how I appreciate the Bible, and that Jordan Peterson collected wisdom of evolutionary psychology type of sense. Whether or not any of the stories are ever true, they are metaphysically true in a lot of ways. They tell us something about ourselves and the patterns we repeat. You could do worse than studying those ancient stories and really kind of getting an understanding for what they were trying to tell you. And then you can decide how to best apply it in your life, That's my tangent about storytelling.
Yeah. A lot of people are Petersonian Christians, as I like to call them, and I have no problem with that. If whatever helps those people. I have theological problems with it, but I've got no problems with it in principle. I think that you can use stories from any tradition, not just Christianity, any tradition, to cultivate a good attitude about life and to understand universal themes throughout human history. But as a Christian, I personally take Christianity much further than that. And so I just find it very interesting. I find it very interesting to see how Peterson uses it. But still, I'm happy that he is bringing more awareness to the Bible. I could say that much, saying anything positive about it. But so I was playing RuneScape in one of the fantasy games, and I was involved in a lot of fantasy stuff. And there would be times where I would look up different types of magic. And neuromancy was a form of divination. And so ever since that point, I've been very interested. I used to do these scenarios in my head. Okay, if I had an neuromancer character, how would he fight off and ward off, ill will and bad spirits? What power would he have?
Interesting character class. Yeah. Can he reach into his own dreams and pull out creatures Pokemon style to fight for him?
There were a few things. So there were a few things I actually came up with. I was like, I'll tell some of them to you so we can nerd out. He could infiltrate dreams with an incantation.
He could also get information. Yeah.
He could get information. He could also manipulate the landscape of dreams. Like imagine Freddy Krueger, but a wizard instead. He could do that and cause it to have real effect. He could use a form of chronomancy to go into the future in the dream to see what the person might dream of in the future to indicate what might happen in their life or what they might experience. Although there are a lot of different things he could do. But outside of the dream, he wasn't really all that powerful. Although the idea of him manipulating his own dream is pretty good. But if he would have to get his enemies to sleep, lull them into a sleep before he could do anything. And I just found that idea so fascinating because most wizards...
I wonder if you might also be a part alchemist in a way of if you need your enemy to be asleep to get into their dreams, then you want, blowgun powdered darts
that's a good idea.
Knock people out, soporific.
Good idea.
Yeah, something like that.
Good idea. So this is the kind of stuff that 14-year-old Christian Watson was thinking about, and it's so fun to relive it, man. It's so fun.
I've got a similar thing going on. When I was 14, I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons with a group of friends, and presaging my eventual editorial endeavors today, I used to make custom character sheets because I didn't like the ones that came in the book. They didn't, the lines weren't spaced enough.
Yeah.
They put stuff, they didn't leave me enough room for equipment, like a lot of equipment, and I need a lot of materials, and I need a place to draw pictures and maps. And so I was, editing and creating my own character sheets. I think it's 20 some odd years, 30 years ago. Wow.
Yeah. And then you have different cultures. You have Japanese Shintoism, and everything's a spirit in Shinto belief. There's a kami, so to speak, of everything. And so I had a Miko, who is a Shinto priestess, a shrine priestess who helps the Kanushi being the priest. I was in a game. I think it was like World of Darkness, which is another tabletop system. And
it's like Vampire the Masquerade and the Werewolf.
Vampire the Masquerade. Yeah, so I was playing for a while. Not really since I played EverQuest back in the day. I was playing Mage. I was playing Mage the Ascension, and I had this Miko. And one time, this is like a modern setting, like in a modern American town. And one time there was this lady who had these, like, they were being assaulted by vampires in their dreams, having these nightmares. So the Miko used mind magic and communicated with the kami, and then basically went into the dream and purged the dream of the Kagari, which is like the negative stuff that Shinto loses, like the negative taint that we have sometimes, and purged it with the Kagari, and then found the vampires who were doing it and went to war with them outside the dream. Now I ended up getting her killed because the vampire's like very high level, like 1,000-year-old, like incredibly powerful, and that ended up getting her killed because she was like a mid-tier priestess, but she infected the dream. And so dreams have always been fascinating to me from a story standpoint, and from also a psychological perspective as well.
They often tell very fascinating tales, like what is going on here, and why are we telling ourselves this story in this way? Is my perspective. Now, some people think dreams come to us from other places. They've been inspired. There's been a lot of different thoughts throughout time about where dreams come from and why. Like, speaking of oneros, the Greeks conceived of sleep and dream. They use the terms interchangeable. So book 14, Dreams in Homer and Greek Mythology, my latest publication, is where I'm getting a lot of this stuff from. And they had 14 different words for dreams or sleeping, or that experience we have. And they thought of it just like, Zeus would send thunderbolts. What later the Romans would call Morpheus would come to our dreams and give things. I mean, and that goes to the series out on Netflix right now that I just watched, Sandman. Fascinating, straight out of Greek mythology. And all that stuff. We've got the fates in there. We've got the muses. A lot of these ancient conceptions we've never lost. We just changed the names. Like what we call today inspiration. We got a new idea. The hell does that come from? You might as well call it comes from the muses. We still don't know. We have no idea. We can watch it happen in the brain, and we think we understand that it's an idea of, the right circumstances and the right preconditions and a certain connective tissue that's already been laid out there. But then there's the spark, that flame that magically appears above the pyramid, and there's a gap there. We don't know where that comes from. It could be, whisperings of the muses or inspiration of the gods. I like to be very humble in my, I've got a lot of training and I've got a lot of experience and I have a great passion for this type of thing, but getting people good answers is a miracle. I don't know how this, I do, I'm not trying to be faux humble. I don't know how I do it. I don't know how these associations occur in my mind. They could be put there. You can say it's a gift from God. I think that's a legitimate metaphorical understanding of what it is I do, and maybe even literal, if you believe that specifically. It ain't all me. There's something else going on here. I just happen to have the ability to be open to it, and then I choose to be open to it, and then it happens. What it is, hell if I know. So
yeah, absolutely. So with this, when I messaged you, I told you about a dream. I told you that I had a dream. I didn't tell you about the dream.
Yeah. Do you want to jump into it now and try and do your own analysis of your dream?
Yeah. Although I'll need your help.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, I'll need your help.
I was going to make a note of the time so I can make sure, because I go back and I do the little teaser trailer videos and whatnot. So about hour 15 in, we started talking about the dream thing.
Okay, yeah. So I need your help.
Sure.
So
So my just to let you know for the audience, if this is your first time watching, basic process. Number one, I shut up and listen, and I just write down the narrative of the dream, beginning to end, whatever the dreamer remembers. Then we pause and we go through it a second time, what I call the deep dive. And I need to during that process, I try and put myself inside the perspective of the dreamer, looking out of their eyes. What do you see? What do you feel? What do you think? And we get as many more details as we can. And then somewhere between that and, getting an answer, we put it together collaboratively. So that's the basic thing.
so the details, like most dreams, are very sparse.
Yeah.
They are choppy, but I think I have an idea of what happened. So I'm only going to tell you what I can really remember.
Yeah,
I'll
as
leave
best
the
you can in chronological order, and I'm ready when you are. Yeah.
Okay, so there was this gentleman who I was talking to, and a dating sort of way, and he I've not, and we haven't had any at this point planned our first date yet, and still haven't to this day. But it's nighttime, and there's this truck that pulls up to this house. I don't know how big the house is, but it's a house. And the gentleman who I was talking to, someone that looks like him, came out of the truck, has, I can see your facial expressions, has this black cap on, and goes into the back of the truck and takes out none of those things that you cut, use them to cut bushes or grass with. Like they're like long, and like there's like a little blade at the end of it, and like you just click it. Those
weed whacker,
yeah,
type of thing.
I think it's a weed whacker or something like that. It's like a long apparatus that has like a little thing that spins, and he got that, picked it up, came to the house, and I remember that in the house. I'm laughing because it's just humorous. This I even have this dream in the house. There are people who are pro-life, like me. I'm pro-life politically, and they're in like three different rooms, and they're on like the third or second floor, and this individual walks up. It's so absurd. He walks up, takes this weed whacker or whatever, and proceeds to attack the other pro-life people. I get a notice, like I see it, and I happen to escape. Like I jump out the window or something, and I hear him saying, "I'm coming for you, I'm coming for you, I'm coming for you." And I'm like running, and I get to a place, and the dream ends. And I remember he never caught me, but he kept saying, "I'm coming for you, Watson, I'm coming for you." And he basically just killed all the other people in the house. Just killed them. And I remember they were pro-life. I had no other detail about them. They're just pro-life. He comes in and just kills all of them.
Okay.
And so I'm just running, and the dream ends there. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, is this some kind of subconscious apprehension I have about this individual? Does something about his personality when I talk to him trigger this idea in me? Because he is also pro-life too. He's conservative politically. So I'm like, okay, is this some sort of apprehension I have about this particular individual? Or is this some sort of a sign that this individual may be dangerous? I don't know. Or was this a sign? I never got that feeling, but I'm suspicious of everybody when I first meet them. I don't know. It's just very weird because the fact that there were pro-life people in the weed whacker, he's going on with the weed whacker.
Yeah.
It's just like, that's pretty guttural.
Does that mean what it means? Or what it appears to mean? Or does it mean something else? So one thing I like to reassure folks is that 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, if you are stabbing your beloved dog in your dream, you do not actually desire to stab your dog in real life. This is not a hidden wish. So I don't use say pure Freudian things. Freud
Okay.
would say, well, a dagger is a penis, and your dog represents a female dog, so to speak. And so you are wishing to express your sexual urges. I mean, he would have a very I could just tell you the Freudian analysis where he would go with that. But that doesn't mean he was wrong about everything. He invented basically talk therapy and like, hey, we can cure people this way. He gets his kudos where they are, but things aren't always what they appear to be. They generally represent an idea, a discrete concept that fits together. So I don't want people to be afraid to share things like this, like you did very bravely. He's like, wow, I'm having this situation, and what does this really mean? And on that specific answer, I would say you have no desire to kill pro-life people. I think you would probably agree right now in your head, that is not something you wish for. So definitely I'd say that's not it. I don't get that feeling at all from it. So what?
It was someone else coming in and just killing all of them. That was mortifying.
Yeah.
That was rough.
For sure. And you ran away, and you felt threatened as well.
Yeah.
So there's that element too. And we're going to get to that, of course, but there's even some perspectives on dreams where they say, well, everybody in the dream is you in some ways. I think there's a lot of, I'm borrowing from a lot of these things. It is an aspect of your thoughts. You conceived this idea in this way to show yourself something because you're thinking through something. You're having a chain of connected ideas that are mostly displaying themselves visually. This is how I understand dreams. You can get different answers from different people, but that's what I do. So, step one, shut up and listen. We did. I got a little bit of a storyline now. We're going to go back to the very beginning. So before you, I think, started, or maybe I'm not understanding it. That's why I need to ask. So, you were talking to a man in a dating way, is what you said.
Yes.
That is in the dream, or this is your.
No, this is a man who I was outside the dream who I'm talking to, and he's the person who was in the dream.
Okay, good. So just to be clear, so I have a direction to go with it. You are gay?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay,
yes.
fair enough. I had no idea, and that. Well, that would. Yeah, I don't ask. I don't care. It's unless it's relevant to whatever. I don't think I've ever asked anyone's sexual orientation in any of the interviews I've ever done because it never seemed.
I'm surprised it's not
necessarily
obvious.
relevant. What?
I'm surprised it's not obvious.
Oh, maybe it's just me. I'm a little on the legit diagnosed autism spectrum. So I just think some people have a way of speaking, and that's their way. And whatever it is what it is. Yeah, probably the last guy you would suspect, one of the most macho men I've ever met was my gay martial arts instructor a few years back. Never would have guessed that he liked boys. He was just a butch man, just that kind of guy. Yeah. And if I don't even know how I think I was training with him for 2 years before I even found out. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I never knew. Never had reason to suspect. I don't know. I don't pay attention. Some things just don't matter to me. It's like, whatever, you do you. Okay. So this is a guy, in IRL, as they say, in real life. Yes. And so possible romantic interest, and you haven't even arrived yet in real life at the point of planning a first date. This is still all preliminary. Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha. That's not bad for so. And about how long ago did this dream take place?
Maybe a week.
Okay. Was it before you kind of got dogpiled with a million views, or during that? Before. Okay. So life was more simple back then. You were just focused on, do I want to go on a date or not? Okay. So in the dream, it's nighttime. That is interesting.
Yeah, it's
and
nighttime.
Do you see yourself anywhere in the dream, or are you looking out of your own eyes, so to speak?
I think I'm looking out my own eyes the entire time.
So you are outside the house?
No, I'm inside the house, but I have like a third person omniscient view. Like I can see the house, I can see the other people, I can see him, but I can't really see me. I can't really see me.
Gotcha. And he pulled up in a truck, you say?
Yes. I think it was, I'm looking to see like a very dark orange, reddish kind of color. Rusted a little bit. Yeah. It had like a thing in the back of it, like a wagon a little bit in the back. Like, you know how trucks have. Like a thing in the back that carries stuff.
Canopy and like where you need to lift something to be able to open it up? Was it a canopy on the truck?
But like a pickup truck, you know how people like they can like go inside the back of a truck and like sit in it.
Yeah. So this was a cover on the truck bed portion.
Yeah, the truck had a bed. The truck had a bed. Truck had a bed.
It had a bed, but also a covered bed. So like a canopy over the bed.
Like
a shell? No, it had
a bed.
Gotcha. Okay, it may or may not be important, but backing up just a little bit because I got a bit ahead of myself. Any first impression features from that third person's perspective, the house? Anything stand out about the way it's composed? It's a nice house. It's a crappy house. It's $1 million mansion.
A brick house with some windows. I think maybe 3 windows in the front, something like that. But it has a few floors to it too.
We're talking just kind of suburban residential, middle income. Okay.
Yeah.
Suburban. Any features of the neighborhood it's in stand out to you? Do you see anything beyond the house in the front? Does it have a front lawn?
I see the brick house, which is kind of structured like an upstanding rectangle.
Okay.
I see a paved street in front of the house. And there's like and the truck's on the paved street. Then next to the truck, there's like a sidewalk, like a white sidewalk. And there's like a little sidewalk going up to the house. Anything else is a little bit hazy for me. Sure.
Is that a generic suburban neighborhood like you would have been familiar with from childhood? Was that kind of where you grew up?
In the suburbs. I grew up in the suburbs, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, yes. Many of my places had like a paved sidewalk and then like a road, like a regular road that's like looks pristine, has a little glitter on it. You know what I'm saying? Like regular road. Yeah.
Okay. Good deal. And you said the truck, it had kind of maybe a dark orangish tint to it, and the idea of rusted came to mind. Yes. Anything else that stands out about the truck? If you can kind of let your inner eye linger on it for a second.
Has the bed, the color. It's dark inside the trunk.
Like you can't see inside the cab?
You see the silhouette a little bit of a guy, but it's basically dark inside the truck. And you don't really see a lot of features inside the truck. He just comes out.
Yeah.
And it immediately puts on a brown cap.
Okay.
I don't even see where he gets the cap. He puts on the brown cap. And the cap is like, it covers the back of his head, but there's like a pointed part going up. It's not like any hat I've seen in real life. There's like a pointed part going this way. Basically, like imagine it's covers the back of his head like this, and like there's a part going this way.
Huh. That is interesting.
It's really weird.
Almost like graduation cap, like people wear with cap and gown.
That covers their entire thing.
Yeah,
it's like a flat leather brown cap, think of a baseball mitt fitted to be a hat that's has less texture to it. It's more smooth. It doesn't cover the whole head.
That's interesting. There's got to be something there, and we may get around to it, we may not. But that's one of the most bizarre visuals I can think of. Is like because you know why it's like a regular hat but inverted. Like the bill is not here, the bill's up here, and it's weird. This weird pointed thing.
Yeah.
And any idea of what it felt like it was made of, or why he would be wearing that particular kind of hat?
Brown leather.
It was very like a leather.
Smooth leather. Okay. Yes.
Interesting. I don't know. We may not be able to make anything of that. That's very strange. You know, of all the weird things I've heard, and dreams are just weird. There's nothing wrong with weird, but this kind of inverted, strange, pointy hat. If we could nail down why he was wearing that, maybe someone come to you, let it percolate, as I say. Maybe we'll come back around. So he gets out and immediately puts on the cap and goes to the bed of the truck and pulls out like the weed whacker.
Yes.
And you imagined blades on it?
Yes, well, there's like blades, very sharp serrated blades.
Weed whacker. Um, large serrated blades. I can't read my own handwriting. Serrated. And how did you have any emotional response to seeing him pull up, not being able to see inside, watching him exit, putting on the hat, getting the tool? Was there like a building sense of foreboding, or was it all no emotional response? Were you happy to see him?
It was very foreboding. Very foreboding. Yeah, I didn't know if I had seen it actually in the dream. If like me myself had seen it in the dream, had seen him come up yet in the dream. But by the time he was in the house, I knew he was in the house.
And so it escalated quickly to this ain't right type of feeling.
Yes.
Okay.
There was no like immense buildup. It's like he like came right into the house, and like the week was on, he just came being killing people. I saw a stairwell too, like a wooden stairwell.
As a part of the house or leading up to the house?
Part of the house.
So inside, and that's something your mind's eye envisioned him climbing to get to the other folks. So do you have any kind of he went here first and then he went there? Like, did he start in the living room, or there was nobody in the living room?
He went straight up into the top of the house where I was, and there were like 4 other people near me.
Okay.
And he just began kill. I heard the silent whacker. He just began killing them, cutting them up.
When you say there were maybe 3 or 4 other people there, it was 1 person per room?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What kind of stairs was it again? You said like a spiral?
Wooden stairs, like wooden stairs, not spiral.
Just regular wooden stairs.
Yeah, going up. Yeah.
And you were on the 2nd floor or higher? You think?
I was on the floor while the rooms were up, but it was like a floor that was above the 1st floor, so either was 2nd or 3rd or something. Okay. It was above the 1st floor though.
Do you have any sense of the room you were in? How it was composed, the furniture present, colors, anything?
There were white curtains and a window. Everything else is dark. I know there was a bed, but everything else was like very dark. The detail really wasn't in the room.
Okay. And even though you knew you were in this room, you were still watching kind of omniscient third person-ish?
Yeah.
And any sense of how the rooms were laid out and the order he went to them?
I think it was random. He just began randomly busting down doors and killing people. like random. Like it wasn't like methodological. It was like random. Yeah, very random.
You don't have a sense of which room he might have gone to first? Like, was there a sense of not an order of operations, but like it was definitely the room closest to me first, and then the one at the end of the hall, and then he came back this way for some reason, or no sense at all of exactly how he did it?
The rooms were like in like the one hallway, like right next to each other. Like there were no rooms that were this way or that way. They were all like scrunched up against each other.
Okay, so it was almost like you know that political cartoon image where it's death and he's knocking on doors and he's down to the last door and all the other doors are blood coming out from
exactly like that. Yep.
Kind of that feeling. Okay.
Yeah.
So a row of rooms.
Yes.
Was your room at the end of the hall, so to speak? Like you started just.
It was like the last one. The last one.
So he might have had just first room first, second room second, done. And whether or not you know that, that's kind of the feel.
Right.
Okay, fair enough. And then any other things? You heard the blades and you heard the screaming and you knew these people were being hurt. Okay.
Yes. And the next thing I heard after the blades was, "I'm coming for you, Watson."
Okay.
That's the next thing I heard after the blades.
When did you know that all the people in the rooms were pro-life people? How did that thought occur to you?
Well, that's the question, because I just had this intuition that we're all pro-life. Nothing particularly, but like it was an intuition. He was just killing.
Okay. So you had and that's the say, I tell this to folks too. It's like knowing something in a dream is exactly the same as seeing it in a dream. Because the visual is no more real than the knowing. It's just a different kind of knowing. It's a knowing in a visual shape. This is what happened, and I knew this was happening. Take it for granted. Just like people can fly. It is what it is. But when I ask questions like that, it brings out, so you were part of this group. We all were pro-life.
Yes, we were all. And that's similar.
Yeah, and you were at the end of the row when he was carving a path through these people, taking them in order, in the order he found them. And then the last thing he was yelling is, "I'm coming for you, Watson."
Yes.
And you mentioned the room had curtains and a window. Did you dive out the window? How did you get out of there?
I dived when I ran. I don't know where I ran to. That part's hazy, but I got away. I noticed that.
Any sense of exiting the room? Like kind of how that felt when it happened? Or did you land in the grass? Did you climb down a trellis?
I landed and I went towards dark area. Like a dark area. It's entirely dark.
Were you running across the lawn, down the sidewalk, down the street?
Would have been like across. Like imagine a house, but there was like dark area behind, like maybe like a woods, and you just like dart down there. That's what was happening.
Almost kind of between two houses across the street, heading for the darkness behind them.
In the house, behind the house. Yeah.
And you had the sense that he was definitely in pursuit.
I killed him. Yeah.
And he was still, could you still hear him yelling as you were running across the street? And you could still hear the blades maybe?
Yes.
Okay.
Yelling more than anything else.
Did you have any, backing up again, at any point between when he was approaching the room and you dived out the window and ran, do you have visuals of what had happened to the people, how they had been harmed, how the death dealing was dispensed? You had to go for the legs.
I never saw any of them coming. I never saw any of them kill, thank goodness. But I just heard the blades and I knew he had killed them.
Okay. No image of the actual killing. And it was either as you approached the darkness or as you ran into the darkness. At some point, the dream ended. You had gotten away, but he was still in pursuit.
He was still around. I don't know if he was in pursuit or not. But he was like, I'm coming for you.
You were still under threat.
Yes, under threat, yes.
Whoop, I just threw my pencil at myself. You know what? I got another one right here. Another pen. Okay, then you woke up. There we go. We went back through it again. So I like to pause round about this point before I start making suggestions of my own and say, now that we've been through it twice and a second time in a little bit more detail, maybe pulled out some things we hadn't mentioned before, had you take a look at it from some different angles, describe some things. Did anything jump into your mind as, I think this was connected with that, or this made me think of this? Any of your own observations, insights?
I do remember the doors being broken, like visibly broken. The doors of the rooms he went into being visibly broken.
Okay, more detail. Wonderful.
I remember being like visibly broken. Never saw the killings, but I knew there were people in the room and like he had the sound of the whacker was on. And he was just cutting them up. I know he was cutting them up. It sounds very macabre, but he was just cutting them up. Other than that, that truck looked really old.
Say again?
That truck looked really old.
Yeah, it did. Worn, rusted even. I mean, that rust is a great symbol of something that has been around a while and it is starting to decay, perhaps old enough to have suffered deterioration. Speaking of which, anything about the people in the rooms? Did you know anything about them beyond being pro-life? Were they old? Were they young, male, female?
Just pro-life. That's it. Just
fair enough.
Faceless representations of the idea.
Fair enough. Yeah, they were being killed. Yeah.
So that's about all the detail. Yeah.
Yeah, but any sudden aha moments for you in terms of like, oh, you know, when I was telling you that I had this thought, and maybe it's connected to this. I know you gave me a little bit beforehand, but
I think maybe the dream could be a metaphor about my fear. Or no, the dream could be a metaphor of the intensity of certain political positions that I hold. So, like, for example, being pro-life is a very intense position because it's about a very complex issue that is often very emotional.
that was probably the first place I was going to go to. The idea of, well, this is a rather specific type of political position. Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, maybe it represents just my perception of the other position, but I don't think of the other position, pro-choice, just like that, like killing people with free will. I don't think of it like that. Exactly. Because these weren't babies, these are like full-grown humans.
Exactly. Yeah. That's one thing I thought of too, is the idea that these people, full-grown humans, because you weren't describing them as babies being killed, which of course I would imagine a baby, especially in the womb, would be very pro-life. Hey, let's not maybe kill me. But the idea of pro-lifeness itself, and one at a time, these representations of the idea itself being cut down, killed, the idea itself dead, and the idea that the so there's something going on there. Well, there's all kinds of things going on. So let's go back to the beginning a little bit. So the very first thing you did was you brought this potential romantic interest into your dream, and you put this weapon in his hand. So there seems to be, okay, you brought a potential romantic interest into your dream, you put a weapon in his hand, you had him cutting down specific ideas and chasing you to add you to the list personally.
Yeah.
So there is, in the broadest sense, that we would call this a nightmare. Depends on how you woke up from it. Were you like,
yes.
Were you viscerally, physically, emotionally disturbed when you woke up? Like this was an unpleasant experience?
I was like, what in the world is this dream? And it compelled me to message you.
Fair enough.
Like,
okay.
That was the night I messaged you.
You didn't wake up terrified, like, sweating and darn near screaming. I mean, you woke up okay, and it didn't linger in terms of oh my God, your heart's pounding, terrified. Okay. Confusing. Not that level of nightmare.
No, just confusing.
Gotcha. Okay. So maybe not a nightmare at all. And I what is that? A dream can be unpleasant. It can look at disgusting things. It can be chased in a dream. We would, I went for the nightmare label just because that's kind of what people typically think. But most of the time, it's about how you feel after you woke up and looking back on it. Were you terrified and that feeling stuck with you and just was like, oh, I don't want to feel that again. Wow. But yours was more curiosity, more a rational reflection on what does this mean? Not what am I feeling? Exactly. Gotcha.
Exactly.
That's a little bit different. It's more of an analytical. Nightmare is more of a feeling. Dream, the other types of dreams, a little more in the rational side of things. Of like, let's make this make sense to me. So what am I saying? There is there seems to be a representation broadly of you wondering, not suspecting, wondering. It's like an open-ended question. Is this relationship I'm pursuing maybe going to have to? How is it going to affect my beliefs? How's it gonna? I don't know if before I go anywhere else, is that something that resonates with you just in general? It's like,
my beliefs?
Well,
no, because this individual is also right-leaning as well. But what does resonate on that same spectrum, though, is how well is this going to how well am I going to do in this relationship? Because this is an individual who, just from talking a little bit, I didn't feel like had a lot in common with me, but he was trying to make it seem that way and trying to downplay my fears about me not having a lot in common with him. And trying to play it off by using activities that I used to like gaming. to say, well, you used to like that, so maybe we can get involved in that again, as opposed to affirming the activities that I do, like the philosophy and the things like that.
Yeah.
So there is this lingering idea. Oh, is this right, Christian? Does this seem right to you? That's what I resonate with that.
Yeah, that is somewhere I was going to. So, and it isn't actually the specific idea of literally being pro-life. It's more like I would say that's probably set up in your dream as an icon of something that is so important to you, it would never change. You will not compromise on that for anyone's sake.
Exactly. No, that's right.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's not that it's that issue. It could have been another issue, but you're like, okay, here's something that's as important to me as this. Where do I put the priority in the relationship and give up something I think is important? Or would that be the equivalent of this relationship killing my values?
Wow.
You getting a feeling?
Wow. Yes, exactly.
You got to feel it right here. If it is, I think I'm feeling something.
Wow. That is, yes, that's right. Yes, maybe the pro-life was just a placeholder. It was just a placeholder because I hold my interest in philosophy and things like that very important to me. Yeah. I'm uncompromising, just like on the pro-life issue. And so the fact that someone is visibly not interested in that and is trying to coax me in different directions, that's like almost killing a part of me.
Or at least you wonder if that's what would end up happening if you were to value the relationship, because relationships take work and compromise and different. And there's some things you can't compromise. It would be like, so, and I don't think you believe he wants you to give up that opinion. I don't think that's anything. No. And I'm sure he actually would agree with you. And like, yeah, we share the same values. But it is that idea of compatibility. Like, where do you put, you also may be looking at it like, if I chase this relationship, am I going to sacrifice speaking my truth in the world in a way that would kill these representations of my ideas as something living, something I value for the ability to express it to others. So there's an interesting conclusion to the dream too, which is that your answer wasn't kill me too, and stay in the room and I'm just going to let it happen. Actually, I welcome it. It's more like I'm going to run off into the darkness. I don't know where I'm going. I'm going to go anywhere but surrender, and you get away. So it's like you've kind of said to yourself that I would leave a bad situation rather than let my relationship with someone else change me fundamentally. I would get the hell out of Dodge.
Right.
And it's, right. I think that probably resonates with you too. You're very dedicated to your principles.
That's right. Absolutely. I'm not someone who compromises a lot. I'm very stubborn. And if that means running away from everything, my comfort, maybe the better one was my comfort.
Yeah, you did put it in a very suburban, residential home with a 2-story.
Grew up in those kinds of,
very much similar to your childhood where you grew up. I mean, you had I saw it in your face for just a moment there. You had a very strong, those are like the streets I played on as a kid.
Yeah.
So that's got to represent something along the lines of your concept of the white picket fence home, in a way of like, if I could have something like I grew up with, that's good. That's success. That's the feeling of a home. And here's this threat, the potential of a threat coming into your representation of a comfy, cozy, successful home-like environment, and dispensing this, disrupting the flow of things, removing the inhabitants in a way that, like they belong there. This other person maybe doesn't. It's definitely an intruder. And you said, they had to, you saw an impression of doors being broken down. It's like this person wasn't invited in. This is a very aggressive attack, not just the killing, but the nature of having to break down doors to get in there. These are secure spaces where these ideas are supposed to be safe, perhaps.
Right.
I don't know. I said a lot of stuff there. I don't know if you had any thoughts.
All that makes sense. The doors do represent barriers to certain kind of things. Maybe boundaries. Maybe the doors represent boundaries. And him breaking the doors is taking down the boundaries
That's a great connection. I hadn't thought of.
that I have for myself. Because he did try, hey, well, maybe you want to do this again. You used to do this when you were a kid. Why don't you do games again? I don't have an interest in games. And I have a boundary against someone trying to change what I like. Maybe the doors are the boundaries being broken. Wow. Yeah.
Oh, that's very good. That's very good too. And so, I hesitate, or I tell people not to jump to conclusions about, well, this dream was a sign from God, from your own psyche, that you don't want anything to do with this guy. More than anything, I would say you're thinking through the potential complications that you got a bit of a feeling about, of like, are we a good match or not? I like him. He seems like a good guy. I'm attracted to him. He's interested in me enough to listen, whether he's interested in the subject or not. And he's making an effort, but he made the wrong effort, perhaps trying to get you back interested in things that, like, I don't want to say desperate, but in a way, a desperate search for it. Well, I want this to work so badly. Yeah. Let's find something we can share.
Yeah. There were actually several times. There were several times I had to say, dude, slow down, go slow. We just met, go slow. Because he was like, well, I want to date you. I want to make you mine. Like, hey, go slow. No, go slow, man. Go slow. I can't do this. If you do this, I'm going to leave. It's like, go slow. He's like, okay, I will. I'm like, go slow, man. Go slow. I promise you, I will stop this. That was another worry of mine.
Fair enough. Yeah. And, I mean, why a weed whacker? I mean, he didn't come in with a machete. He didn't come in with a lawnmower. Could have been a lawnmower. It's this weed whacker thing with blades on it. And I know you mentioned the Crow movie earlier. That brought that to mind too, but I don't think that's it. Unless you think it is, but
no,
like serrated blade, weed whacker type things.
Just cutting it all off.
Do you own one of those? Do you do your own care?
When I was little, I think when I was little, actually, someone used to cut my grandmother's bushes in front of her house. And it was either a weed whacker or like some chainsaw looking apparatus they used to cut the bushes. I forgot what it is. But it was something like
those
that.
Things where it had the little blades that cut back and forth like this.
Yeah. That too.
Looks like a metal swordfish. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the only time in my life that I've seen that kind of thing.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's definitely an otherwise innocuous tool that has a useful purpose. It's like, trimming your lawn is wonderful, but it's being misused. It's like a tool being used for a nefarious purpose that it's not really. I mean, you can use anything for a nefarious purpose, but it's very much representative of yard care, yard work. Is this person more blue collar than you are ish?
Very blue collar, actually very blue collar.
Gotcha. Maybe that's your iconic representation of someone who works for a living. There's work to do landscaping. That's a very iconic blue collar type. Work, factory work, landscaping, all kinds of stuff where you're sweating in the sun and you're breaking your back, and so there might be something there.
That makes total sense.
I don't know if that brings anything to mind. Yeah.
Yeah, factory worker. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's blue collar.
Yeah.
Maybe
and there's honestly, there may be a little bit of a mismatch there. There may not. Oh, but this is what I was getting to earlier when I was saying, don't jump to conclusions about this isn't that the dream's telling you don't pursue this relationship. But I think what you're thinking through is, what are all the potential complications and can we navigate them successfully? Could we make this work if we do it the right way? Is it, are we, oil and water? We just are. And it's nobody's fault, but, the attraction isn't enough. Or is there actually a way to blend it? I got to say, my wife and I we have a lot of values in common, and a lot of work ethic in common, and some crossover in hobbies, but we're very solitary people. We actually don't spend a lot of time together. I'm not putting her on blast or anything, but that works for us. What I needed was someone who says, you're a hermit, I'm a hermit too. Let's live together and never talk. And we love it. I mean, it's not that bad, but if it works, it works. And finding that compatibility is usually more important than the nature of the differences. Like, she likes to, it was like, I don't paint my nails. She does. So maybe it's a male female thing, but I very well could have been into painting my nails too. And then we would have had that in common, but it doesn't matter that we don't. Yeah. So, at the very least, yeah. So I wouldn't have you come away from this saying, yeah, the dream, prophecy of the dream is definitely cut this off. I wouldn't say the dream necessarily saying you should be with him either. I think you have legitimate concerns that you're thinking through in your sleeping mind. That's my ramble.
No, this is giving me a lot of clarity. I never thought of the weed whacker thing as a representation of the blue collar. I never thought of like the doors as boundaries. This is actually a lot of clarity.
That's what I do. That's why they call me the wizard.
Yeah, this is clarity.
No, I'm being honest with you too. I don't know where this stuff comes from. I just start talking and crazy shit comes out that people start feeling like, wait a minute, what you just said. How did I do that? I feel like I didn't even do it at all. I just kind of put it out there and it happened. Wow. The spirit moving through me, so to speak. I'm trying not to be faux humble, but I think that's really true. So
you're the real deal. I'm telling you.
Thank you so much. I'll be honest, humble brag, but everyone I've spoken to honestly thinks, yeah, like you said, real deal. I mean, I'm not doing this I'm doing it for shits and giggles because I enjoy it, but I'm not doing it for a grift. I'm not putting on a show. I'm not a con artist in that way. I'm trying to make something real with people that are giving me something real, as real as our thoughts can be. We still got to figure out that hat. The hat's upside down. What is that?
I have no idea. It's like a baseball cap in the back, like a pointed shape.
Do you have any connection? Was he into sports? Is that kind of a thing? Because that's something you see kids do. They put their baseball mitt on their head sometimes.
Likes to game, but not into sports, I don't think.
Not a explicit sports reference. Not like a visor of a helmet tipped up. Not quite. Because it wasn't a helmet. It was definitely a hat, like a leathery brown hat.
You know those hats, like where there's like a thing on the front, you just put it on. I forget what they call those hats, but you just like pop it on, and it has a cover and everything. It's like leathery normally. What do you call those hats? You see a lot of middle-aged folks wearing them sometimes.
It's like a golf caddy hat, almost. Is that what you're kind of talking about?
I think it's a golf cap, actually. Maybe.
And I think those came from what's that movie? No, it's
yes. So like
Peaky Blinders. I think it's kind of more of an late 18th century. Early
so like a scally cap.
Now I want to look it up and see what that is. Scally cap. Well, any association with that? Now that you're looking at images of it, does it bring anything out to you? Like, why that kind of hat? What does that hat mean? You get something or you don't,
Well, if you look at Scally Cap, it's kind of more classy, I guess. It's more of a more older, distinguished look.
Yeah.
Which
is this guy a little older than you, or
I'm 22, he's 25.
Okay. Is he kind of a sharp dresser-ish, or not so much?
No.
Or not exactly. No, certainly not in that style of like a wearing a button-up vest and a pocket watch with the
No.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
Gotcha. Fair enough.
Why is the Scally Cap? Maybe it's a reflection of myself.
Could be. That's more of that would be more of your style.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Okay. Maybe you're maybe there was a hint of wanting to be generous to him in the dream by putting on his head something that represented a piece of you. Like it's not all bad. There's a reason I'm into this.
Wow.
You think so? You got a feeling there again?
Yeah.
Good deal. That's what I'm going for. That's the only way anyone knows this is real is when you experience that. You're like, oh, what you just said. Wow. Zing. The light bulb goes on and you get like,
he had that hat on, man. He had that hat on.
Mm-hmm.
He had that hat on.
That's one element that you think would be, just representative of there's a reason there's an attraction there. And it wasn't all bad. It wasn't all menacing.
Yes.
But what if it all goes wrong? What if pieces of myself I need to let them die in order to make this work. Am I willing to make that sacrifice? And in that sense, there isn't necessarily a right or wrong answer on that, because you might say, yeah, this is worth it. This person is so important to me. I'm willing to let some things go. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes there's too much of a conflict there. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You're the real deal.
I keep wanting to give you more good answers. I think we covered, I mean, do you think that's a good question? Are there elements of the dream? It was interesting to me. I'm all over the place. Half a thought and I start all over. There was nothing downstairs. He didn't do anything downstairs. There was maybe there's a living room, a kitchen, but it was empty. The house was empty, number one, downstairs, and it was completely bypassed for the rooms.
I could see nothing downstairs. It was just the stairs going up. Nothing below.
Sometimes what's missing is as interesting as what's present. So you didn't put the house full of people. They weren't even really people. It was living representations of ideas, indeterminate age, no physical appearance, but none of them were downstairs. They were all in bedrooms upstairs. You know, the living room's its own kind of place, kitchen's its own kind of place, garage, but these are bedrooms where people are. It's the most intimate of spaces, maybe the most closely held, closely guarded. They're not public spaces. It's like the layers of an onion. Someone welcomes you onto their yard. And then maybe you can get on the porch. Then maybe you have tea in the living room. Maybe you come in and you have a dinner and in the dining room. Inviting people into your bedroom is very intimate. That's like at the end of like you can't really get closer to someone than that.
Yes.
So there's some kind of representation there too.
Yes. Yes. Maybe, yeah. But there wasn't an invitation though. It was very intrusive.
Yeah. That might be part of it too. You say he was coming on a little strong. It's like, this is.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, can't get stronger than coming in with a weed whacker and kicking down doors. That's pretty strong. It might be too strong. And then again, you can have this conversation with him and say, you know, I had this dream and here's the thing. Here's what I got out of it is that we need to, go slow, get to know each other. Let's find things we actually have in common and don't try and force it. It's a lot of things you can draw from this that don't require you to make a decision. Just to understand your own thought process on, well, how did I get to this representation and what is that? What are the questions I need answers for? That's mostly what I can get out of dreams.
And, you know, I'll tell you this, I do feel, even before the dream, I did feel, you know what, this is not, we don't have enough in common. This is a little bit intrusive. This is a little bit forced. I want this to be natural, but it's not. That was my exact thought process.
Fair enough. Yeah. I like to, in some of my past episodes, I've had people come on where they're like, I had this dream 10 years ago. I've thought about it. I got my own ideas. Tell me what you think. And they give me a challenge and they're like, you know, you said everything I thought and you added more things that I didn't even think of. And I'm like, that's that's what I'm looking for, to be able to give someone where, you know, they know themselves better than I do. And if I can find something that makes as much sense to them as it does to me, some things they've already thought, it doesn't get any better. I love it.
Wow.
Yeah,
so if I need help with dreams in the future, can I come to you?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, definitely. One thing I like to do is try and change it up every week and have somebody new, but that doesn't mean I don't want people to come back. It may not be every week, but
yeah,
I don't know. I've also thought about like, I was thinking about it today, like in terms of business model, it's like, there's nothing wrong with selling books. There's nothing wrong with getting monetized eventually on the channel. But I think there might be some people out there who genuinely want to talk to me. They want to have their dreams analyzed. They're not comfortable coming on a show. They don't want their business out there. They'd rather talk privately, not recorded, just one-on-one. I'm like, I could do that for a fee, you know, and I feel, number one, I feel bad, like, oh, I'm just going to charge people. Well, it's a service. And if they get something out of it, hey, they decide what they pay for. But I think it, you know, for some folks that would like an answer and don't want to go on camera, maybe I wouldn't even know what to charge. That's, if you guys out there got any ideas, what would you be willing to pay? Leave a comment below. Get something going. I got a locals page. I'm hoping to build a membership there too. So I never talk about any of this stuff. I got like 15 different social media and accounts out there. Locals is one of them. Got my videos on Rumble and BitChute. And oh, do you do that? Are you expanded out onto those other platforms?
Oh, honestly.
Okay, good.
Those two. I don't do BitChute. I just haven't expanded that way. But Rumble and Odyssey, you can find me on both of those. Yep.
Well, especially because those will auto sync.
Yep, exactly.
So you don't have to upload your own videos.
Right.
That's a big deal. Yeah, I used to upload to like also Vimeo, Dailymotion, and this other one, but they have
old school.
That's old school. Yeah. Well, they have upload limits on how many total videos you can put up, their storage limits. They've got length limits. Like it can't be too long or they're not going to host it. I'm like, I make 2.5, 3, 4.5 hour videos. You're going to host it or you're not. Yeah. I mean, I can't really chop this stuff up too much.
Yeah, there's a reason those sites haven't taken off ever.
Yeah. No, it's too bad. But yeah, no, Odyssey and Rumble are great, especially with the Rumbles connected to the locals. So that's perfect. I'd love to. And actually, honestly, I do get more views not on YouTube. I actually get more views on some of these other. So if you're watching this video, remember, but you got to buy the historical dream literature, or I got to get a real job.
Yeah.
But well, we're sitting at about 2 hours in. If you feel like you got a good enough answer, you don't have more questions, we can wrap it up either way.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for having me. That was brilliant. I'm going to share the heck out of this episode.
Thank you much.
This is important
on it.
stuff. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, then let's do the housekeeping here. This has been our guest, Christian Watson, on YouTube / Christian Watson, the Pensive Politics Podcast. Also on Twitter at official C Watson. And it's been great having you. I appreciate it. And all of our talk beforehand. That's the stuff I sit around just thinking about all day anyway. So
thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And I wish you all the best with this channel. I know you're going to impact a lot of people. This is good stuff.
I hope to. If I can leave the world better off because I lived in it for a while, that's nothing better. Nothing better. My own housekeeping real quick. Please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, buy t-shirt, coffee mug, 14 books of historical dream literature, and thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.